A Farewell to Arms was first published in 1929 to considerable critical praise and is often hailed as one of Hemingway's greatest works. There were parts of this book that I thought were tremendous, amazing, and I was not sure that I had ever read more beautiful, stunning prose. And then there were sections of this book that I would have chewed my hand off at the wrist to get through faster, but we'll get into that. A Farewell to Arms follows the meanderings and misadventures of Frederick Henry, who is an American ambulance driver on the Italian front of World War I. And we follow him as he falls in love, is injured in battle, returns to the war, and decides that he's had quite enough of that before running back to the open arms of his beloved, and their subsequent fleeing of Italy for Switzerland. All with Frederick's potential execution looming over them for his desertion of the Italian army. The story is broken up into 5 major sections, which are pretty much as I just outlined. And no real spoilers because there honestly isn't that much to spoil, with the exception of 1 or 2 pretty great moments that I want to reserve for the people who might want to read it. Overall, I think yes, I think it was very good. This is the first Hemingway that I've ever read, and I was immediately struck by his ability to describe things without ever actually describing them. Here is one such passage that really stuck out to me. In the late summer of that year, we lived in a house in a village that looked across the river and the plain to the mountains. In the bed of the river there were pebbles and boulders, dry and white in the sun, and the water was clear and swiftly moving and blue in the channels. Troops went by the house and down the road, and the dust they raised powdered the leaves of the trees. The trunks of the trees, too, were dusty, and the leaves fell early that year, and we saw the troops marching along the road, and the dust rising, and leaves, stirred by the breeze, falling, and the soldiers marching, and afterward the road bare and white except for the leaves. That's the first paragraph of the book, and it really sets the tone for how Hemingway describes scenery and movement. I really loved it. The best way I can describe it is that he describes things almost by omission, which I have not really encountered before, and I found it fascinating. The best parts of this book are undoubtedly when we are within our main character and not being subjected to conversation or a social setting. His descriptions and scenes are so vivid and well crafted that I think those are really the selling point of this book. Here's another passage because I think it's easier to just read it to you and let you experience it than for me to continue to bumble along and try to explain it. I had gone to no such place but to the smoke of cafes and nights when the room whirled and you needed to look at the wall to make it stop. Nights in bed, drunk, when you knew that that was all there was, and the strange excitement of waking and not knowing who it was with you, and the world all unreal in the dark and so exciting that you must resume again unknowing and not caring in the night, sure that this was all and all and all and not caring. Suddenly to care very much and to sleep to wake with it, sometimes morning and all that had been there gone and everything sharp and hard and clear, and sometimes a dispute about the cost. Sometimes still pleasant and fond and warm and breakfast and lunch. Sometimes all niceness gone and glad to get out on the street, but always another day starting and then another night. I tried to tell about the night and the difference between the night and the day and how the night was better unless the day was very clean and cold, and I cannot tell it. Sometimes some of these passages and inner thoughts were so profound that I had to read them several times to make sure that I was grasping them. I don't often encounter a lot of philosophy in the realism that I choose to read, but there were some moments in this book that were just so moving to me that I'm sure that I'm going to think about them for a very long time. One such example is this next passage, which is also going to be the last thing that I read for you, for those of you who I'm sure are sick of me reading at this point. If people bring so much courage to this world, the world has to kill them to break them, so of course it kills them. The world breaks everyone, and afterward many are strong at the broken places. But those that will not break, it kills. It kills the very good and the very gentle and the very brave impartially. If you are none of these, you can be sure it will kill you too, but there will be no special hurry. That one's going to hang around with me for a while. This is a book about war and love, and people often have profound and harrowing things to say about both, and I think that's where this book is really, really strong. And being a work of realism, I think where this book gets bogged down is when we get caught up in the moment-to-moment play-by-play of conversations and social settings with Frederick. There are a lot of stream of consciousness conversations between him and other characters that sometimes almost just feel like gibberish or nonsense. His conversations with his beloved Catherine are not particularly interesting. Pretty much anytime he's socializing with someone else, those are the worst moments for me. I think some of this could just be that the writing style is not modern by any means, and that some of the phrasing of the words and just the colloquialisms that are used in the speech hit funny on a more modern ear. And I'm not going to go so far as to say like nobody talks like that, but the conversations are often not very funny and they're very repetitive, and I don't really feel like I got a lot from them. It was kind of interesting to see the discrepancies between his conversations with the people who were still living in society versus the people who were on the front line of the war, and how the war impacted everyone differently, and for some people it seemed to not impact them at all. Maybe that was one benefit of that. And the last thing that I simultaneously hated and loved was the much derided ending. It feels like we spend all of this book really kind of building up to one very specific and important moment, and that moment is really pretty harshly and abruptly cut off. Emotionally, it was very effective. It hurt. I'm still a little upset about it, and I wanted so much more. And I think that's one of those things about realism that works for and against it. Sometimes life be like that. Sometimes things we strive for and bust our ass for and hope for and pray for, those things come and they abruptly end or are taken from us. Lots of things in life end harshly with no resolution. A Farewell to Arms is not a very long read at all, and if anything I quoted or talked about seemed interesting to you, I hope that you will check it out. So far, I do not think it is the great American novel, but I do think it is a great American novel. 4 out of 5 hammers.